Hello and welcome to Decoding Confidence. I'm your host, Advita Patel, a confidence leadership coach and an award-winning communications consultant. And this is a space where we talk honestly about what confidence really looks like at the workplace. Not the loud kind, not the polished and performative kind, but the steady confidence that helps you speak up, make decisions, lead with compassion, and trust yourself, even when things feel uncomfortable. In each episode, I'll be unpacking the habits, behaviours, and moments that will shape confident leadership with practical reflections you can use in real life, everyday work. So whether you're leading others or you're finding your own voice, you're in the right place. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to Decoding Confidence. For a long time, I thought confidence at work looked like having all of the answers. I thought it was about speaking quickly. I thought it was without hesitation. And empathy felt like it was something separate. It was almost like a nice to have thing. And if a leader was empathetic, then that was great. But what I've learned over the years is that empathy is often one of the clearest signals that someone is confident. Someone who's confident enough to listen without trying to fix things, confident enough to hold in the discomfort, and confident enough to also create space for other people to show up fully. So, in this episode, I want to explore empathy as a habit of confident leadership, what it really involves, and why it might be one of the most underestimated skills in the workplace. A few weeks ago, I went for dinner with a friend and I was sharing with them my book concept, the Believe framework, the 7 habits under that framework. And I got to the empathy section. And they're a director who works for quite a big organization, a global organization. And as I was sharing with them the empathy kind of traits and why it's important, they turned around to me and said, "Oh, I think I'm too empathetic. My team sometimes walk all over me and I'm a right soft touch." And I sat there thinking, that actually isn't empathy what you're describing. It's actually something completely different, which is why I want to talk about this topic today, because honestly, empathy is everywhere in leadership conversations right now. Everyone's talking about it. Leaders are kind of thinking about it. Organizations are investing in it. Everyone says that leaders need to have more empathy, but very few people, just like my friend, truly understand what's actually meant by empathetic leadership and can mistake it for other things. And I think part of that is because we have got the wrong idea about what empathy means. Sometimes it can confuse it with other traits, and it is something that I want us to really dig deep in this episode. Now, take this scenario, right? I know in your career at some point, you probably knocked on your line manager's door and asked for a few minutes of their time because you had something that you wanted to discuss with them. They welcome you in and they say, "Take a seat." And as you start to chat, though, you notice that they're not really listening to what you are saying. They're looking and nodding and kind of humming and ahhing like they do, but the eyes keep darting to the laptop screen. You can hear their phone pinging away. You can sense in their body language that you're kind of holding them back because they're starting to shift around, waiting for you to finish or waiting to kind of interrupt your flow. So you start hurrying your point along, right? I know you would have probably felt this. You hurry your point along, and with every passing moment, you're feeling less heard. They start nodding in agreement to you and they start saying, "Oh, we'll take it on board and thanks for sharing that with me." But when that conversation ends, nothing actually changes, right? They don't follow up. There's no real adjustment to the stuff you've said. Nothing shows that what you shared with them actually mattered. And to your line manager, it's likely that they thought they were being quite empathetic. They nodded, like I said, in the right places. They reassured you that they were paying attention and they did the right symbols in a way. But that isn't empathy. That's listening for the sake of listening. And that's what we get confused about when it comes to empathy and what it actually means in leadership. And I honestly believe that is what's costing us in the workplace. It's costing us in the trust that we have with people. It's costing us with engagement. And it's actually costing us in kind of the teams we're trying to build alongside us, to build that trusted relationships with individuals, to build those connections. But first thing is, empathy is not about being nice. It's not about fixing people. And it's definitely not about saying, I understand, when you absolutely don't understand. Here's what empathy actually means. It's about understanding someone else's experience from where they are standing, and then doing something that shows you've actually taken that seriously. And that's the difference with just listening for the sake of listening and being empathetic to somebody. Now, empathy kind of breaks down into two core things, and I'm not going to overcomplicate it because I know you're probably out there having your coffee, your morning coffee, walking the dog, unloading the dishwasher, whatever you're doing. So I'm going to try and keep this quite as simple as I can. So the first thing about empathy, or the first point I want to make about empathy, is that you've got the understanding part. Now, this is where you are genuinely trying to figure out what's going on for someone else, even when it's nothing like your own experience. You don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to relate. But what you do need to do is you need to be willing to step outside of your own head long enough to see what they are saying. And then you've got the feeling part. This is where you recognize how something actually feels for them. And you don't immediately try to fix it, move past it, or make it smaller than what it actually means for them. Now, this part, the feeling part of empathy, is where most of us fall down. And I hold my hands up. This is the one part of empathy I had to do a lot of work on for myself. I was definitely one of those kind of problem fixers. I wanted to fix everything for anyone. If anybody shared a problem with me, I was like, right, I know how to fix that and I'm going to tell you how to do it. And I did that because I realized I didn't like sitting in that discomfort. I absolutely hated silence as well. Sitting in silence used to just make my skin crawl. And I felt I had to fill that silence with just words. So somebody sharing a frustration, an annoyance, or just something that's really bothering them, I went straight into kind of fix mode. And it wasn't until I did my coaching qualification and I became a certified coach, that's when I learned about active listening, and listening just to listen to what that person is seeing and saying without having to put my own thoughts and ideas on top of that. And that was a big part of my learning. And I have to admit, even today, at moments and times, especially with friends, I do struggle with it. And I have to kind of sit on my hands and count to 5 sometimes before I respond. And sometimes with the feeling part of empathy, all it takes is for that individual to know that you've heard them, and saying something as simple as, yeah, I get it, that sounds really hard. And then not saying something to, solutionize for them is really important. And this is where you may lean into kind of your curious questioning, and then you let those questions sit there. So take a second and think about this, right? When was the last time someone made you feel properly heard at work? Not just listened to, but actually heard. And what did they do to make you feel heard? And I can guarantee it just wasn't the words that they were saying. It was probably something that they did afterwards, or something small in terms of the behavior that showed that they were paying attention. Now, you may be listening to this and going, well, why does this even matter? Like, surely it's just part of human life and everybody has empathy there, and it's part of everything that we should do. Yeah, that's true. It is something that we should do, but there's actual real evidence behind why empathetic leadership is really important, and not the performative kind I was sharing with you earlier, but empathetic leadership can actually make people feel safer. It can help them feel more engaged, and teams and people actually bounce back much faster when things go wrong when they're surrounded by empathetic leadership. Now, like my friend earlier who said to me at dinner, like, oh, I think I'm too empathetic. Their belief is that being too empathetic made them too soft and too kind. That isn't true. Being empathetic isn't about being too kind or too soft. And if you start to believe this, you're going to start second guessing yourself. And that isn't helpful at all. But when you are demonstrating empathy, the true sense of empathy, people will feel the conversation being much steadier and your teams will feel less reactive. And confident leadership isn't about being like perfect and being tough and being really focused. It is about just leaning into what is going on around you and making sure that your team know that they can come to you for any challenges that they may be facing. And I guarantee when you think about some of the best connections you've got at work and the trust that you've built, it wasn't done through your technical ability. It was done because you genuinely heard and paid attention to what was going on around you. I'm going to share a story with you about a woman I worked with not so long ago called Melissa. And that's a cover name for her. I don't want to give away her identity. But Melissa was somebody who was a global director, and it was a promotion for her. She'd been working her way up to this level for a long time. Lots and lots of folks really respected Melissa, and her team also respected Melissa, and her managers believed that she was ready for her next stage. Now, her next stage in leadership was looking after a global team. So her team had expanded and she had more direct reports than normally. And when Melissa came to me for support, she shared with me that her usual leadership style wasn't working. She said, people aren't speaking to me as transparently as they used to speak to me. They don't tend to share any challenges they're going through. I find out what's happening in my team from my peers and from other people. I can see that performance is declining. The results are demonstrating that people are going off sick more often than they ever have done before in that team. And I'm really struggling right now, and I don't know why, because I believe that I haven't changed as a person, and I'm still offering them space to talk. I feel like I'm empathetic. I listen. I try and help them. And she was saying all this stuff, and I could see her just feeling more and more sad and withdrawn about what was happening. So I asked her to kind of break down her average week. Like, how does she engage with them? How does she make sure that she has time for them? What does empathy mean for her? What does that look like? Because I could see that it was knocking her self-esteem, and she's starting to second guess herself quite a lot. And then when she went through her week with me, I was like, Melissa, like, where are people getting this time to work with you or talk to you? Like, where's the gap in your diary for them to do that? Because she said to me in our chat that, oh, I have an open door policy. Like, people can book meetings in with me whenever they want to book meetings in with me. I don't have any restrictions on how many meetings people can book in with me. So I said, well, let's look at your diary. So she opens up a diary, her calendar, and we looked at that kind of upcoming week. And oh my goodness, it was back to back from like 8 a.m. in the morning all the way down to like 8 p.m. at night. It was ridiculous, not only for her own mental health and well-being and her own kind of energy, but also in terms of, well, where do people actually book in time with you? Like, where is the gap? And that's the thing with empathy, isn't just about the words that you say or the behaviors that you demonstrate. You've also need to put it in practice and be, practical with how you are offering yourself out for your team. And if your team can't find even 5 minutes in your diary or your calendar to have a conversation, when you've said to them, you can book in whenever you want, whatever time you want, and no restrictions, but they can't, then slowly trust erodes. And that was exactly what was going on with Melissa. Like, she kept saying it over and over again. You can book in time with me. Why are you not talking to me? Put time in my diary. But people couldn't. Every time they went into her calendar to put time in her diary, there was no time. And then what was going on was likely, because I didn't speak to her entire team, but our guess was that people were looking at her diary going, well, she's obviously really busy and she hasn't got time to talk to me, so I'll just leave it alone. I don't want to harass her, because she wasn't a bad leader at all. People really respected her leadership, but they definitely started to see that her words weren't matching her actions. And then all Melissa did, the simplest move she made was she made sure every single day there was a 15-minute, 20-minute gap. Nothing went into that 15, 20-minute gap. It was protected. And she told her PA, protect it at all cost. Like, I don't want anything going into that 20-minute block. And she made sure, because she had a global team, that those 20-minute blocks shifted in different hours. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't how she would want to do it. She definitely wanted more fluidity and allowed people to book in time whenever they needed. But she knew she needed structure because of her bigger remit in her role that she had to do. But do you know what? When I spoke to her 6 months later after our coaching finished, she told me that things had transformed. And she actually acknowledged that even though she's telling people to book time in her diary, she acknowledged that there wasn't time for them to book in. And she apologized and she said, look, I've crafted and created this time now. I want you to just book that time. And if that time is available, I want you to email me directly and I will make that time for you. And she said it started to just transform, and she didn't need as many one-to-ones. People started to be more open in team meetings, and they started to chat to her when she went to visit them in the office a bit more. And it was just that very simple shift that not only kind of helped people trust her and build connection, but demonstrated empathy in the spirit that Melissa intended it to demonstrate. And as you can see, that was just such a simple fix. And it wasn't anything massive, but it made a big difference. And Melissa's personality and her confidence in herself had also transformed. She felt so reassured and confident about not only the work she was doing, but also the work her team were doing, because they were so much more open with her. And that was critical for her leadership style. She needed that transparency. So now you've heard Melissa's story. I want you to kind of think and pause here a little bit and think, what are you going to do to help either your peers, your colleagues, your team, your line manager, if you're a line manager or a people manager? What small shift do you think you could make this week to help people feel heard? And it is a big question, I know it is, but just a tiny tweak here and there. Like, how are you actually listening to people? Are you putting your phone down? Have you shut your laptop down? Have you switched off your notifications when someone wants to have a chat with you? Are you going into a quiet space that's a bit more neutral, or is there a lot of noise around you? Those tiny shifts and micro movements can make such a big difference on how people feel around you and how empathy can be demonstrated in real life situations. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second, because you may be listening to this and thinking, well, that's all well and good if you've got an empathetic leader like Melissa, or if you're surrounded by an empathetic team, or you're working in an empathetic culture. And if that is you and that none of this is kind of relating to you, then what I want to say is that their lack of empathy is not a reflection on your worth. I'm going to say that again. Their lack of empathy is not a reflection on your worth. Some leaders genuinely don't know how to be empathetic because they were never taught to be empathetic, or they don't believe it's a skill that they need. And we can end up waiting for validation and understanding from someone who's never going to give you empathy. And that is a tough pill to swallow. It really is. And I understand and I empathize when you're going through that. So what you need to do is protect your energy and find empathy sidewards. You need to find it from your peers. You need to find it from mentors. You need to find it from people outside of your organization and communities that get it and lead with care. So even if you're not seeing it modeled around you in your workplace, you can find it elsewhere. And that's why I joined so many different communities and have little clubs like Comms Hives and communities like my Comms Rebel community, because it's important that your environment doesn't dictate just how you feel, because otherwise that's going to lead to your self-esteem and your confidence being knocked. So please remember that. Okay, so now I've shared a few stories with you and told you about Melissa and my own experiences, I want to share with you a few things that can help bring empathy into the workplace without the tokenistic behavior or performative kind of behavior as well. There are a few things worth thinking about when it comes to empathy. And the first one may sound a bit odd, but just bear with me. You need empathy for yourself, so self-empathy. If you're consistently running on empty all of the time, your empathy for other people is not going to work. It's going to get really thin. You say, don't you, you're skating on thin ice. So this is about noticing how you treat yourself when things get a bit hard. Do you let yourself rest before you completely kind of burn out? Are you making time for yourself? Do you talk to yourself with compassion, like you would talk to your best friend or someone that you loved dearly? And do you forgive yourself when you mess up? Because if you're leading yourself the way you lead others, are you okay with that? Does that work well for you? And think about that. The second thing is context. This matters a lot. And I shared this earlier when I said you have to understand someone else's perspective. But I also mean this by their culture, their values, their belief systems, how they communicate, what's shaping their experience. Because the more empathy that you have for this, it helps you kind of give you that understanding that everyone is a bit different, not difficult. And that's how you can connect with people. So when you're working with a team that's different from you, or a different version of what you think is normal, then I want you to think about how that is affecting how you interpret someone else's behavior. And the third piece is trust, because empathy and trust are completely inseparable in this. Trust gets built in very tiny micro moments. It's when you say you're going to follow through on what you said you're going to do. It's about being consistent. It's about creating enough safety that people can actually feel that they can be honest with you. And the uncomfortable bit about trust is that we all tend to find it a bit easier when we're empathetic towards people who feel familiar to us. And that goes back to that cultural context on point 2 that I was mentioning. So part of this work is noticing things like, where does empathy come naturally for you? And where does it quietly dry up? And what I mean by this is who on your team might be experiencing you from a distance because you just don't relate with them, even though they are part of your team and haven't actually done anything wrong and you don't intend to do that. But who are you a little bit different with? And that's important for you to really think about because we do it without even noticing sometimes. And I'll give you an example of this. You may have heard of the show Traitors. It's honestly, it's such a brilliant show. And if you haven't heard of the word show Traitors, then please do check it out. I think it's actually global now, but it's a show that's in the UK at the moment. And there's a group of individuals that get together. They don't really know each other. There may be a few relationships, but generally they're all strangers. And the idea of this show is that you have to spot the traitors. There's a group of faithfuls and there's a group of traitors. And the job of the faithfuls is to point out or to spot who the traitors are and then banish them from the castle that they are in. Sounds a bit bizarre, but you'll get the context if you watch it or when you watch it, I should say. So, but what happens in traitors is that they don't really have anything to go off, right? The only thing they can go off is how people behave and how they react. And over the different series, there's been a pattern of behavior towards people who look different from the dominant culture in the room. And those people are often the ones who are banished from the castle first. Because the thing with traitors is that you hear the stories of the contestants on there. He'll go, oh, she reminds me of my mum, or he reminds me of my dad, or they remind me of my siblings. And when you're familiar with that feeling, you feel more connected and trusting of those individuals. If you've got similar lived experiences, if you can relate a bit closer to those individuals, you tend to automatically trust them. And when you trust them in that way, your empathy for them is much different to your empathy from somebody who is a bit different from you. And that's where you need to kind of watch out for those red flags. Are you more empathetic towards somebody in the team who reminds you of your background or your lived experience or somebody that you love dearly? Do you give them more grace? Are you different towards them? Are you more supportive of them than you would be of somebody who has a very different lived experience to you? And everybody does this, by the way. It's not a one trait of one individual. It's something that we all do automatically. but it's about recognizing and understanding when you are doing this and pausing, reflecting and thinking about this. And that's when you don't do this and you're unintentionally making decisions because you don't have that relationship with that person because you can't relate, that's when confidence and trust starts to decline. So I've shared quite a lot with you in this episode about empathy. And what I want to share with you and leave you with is that all of this is demonstrating micro habits. It's not about doing a massive thing in one go. It's little baby steps. And when you do these steps, that's when you do build that belonging. And belonging is where people do their bravest, most courageous work. And empathy isn't about saying the perfect thing. It is about pausing. It is about listening and then doing something that shows that you've actually taken in what people are saying to you. So it is about just taking that minute and thinking about empathy and where does it come easily for you? Where is it harder for you? And what do you need to work on a little bit more, especially with intention, because that's the important part. Not perfect, like I said, but just with intention. So before you go, if you found this episode interesting and relatable, and if it resonated with you, then please do me a favor and share it with someone who you believe needs to hear it as well. Maybe it's a friend who's struggling with confidence and empathy. It's a peer, a colleague. Maybe it's a leader who's just trying to figure things out about how to lead a team. But anyone that you believe may benefit from knowing about empathy and confidence, it's really important that you do share what you can so they don't think they're doing this alone. And that's why I do these podcast episodes, is to make sure that people are not alone and they have the support if they need it. If you've got any questions about what I've spoken about today, please email me at advita@decodingconfidence.com and I will get back to you. Next week, I am going to break down the importance of learning and how it can supercharge our self-esteem and confidence. And it'll be a really good episode. I'm going to share some practical tips and advice with you as well. So until next time, remember, keep decoding your confidence in the way that works for you. I'll see you soon. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this episode gave you something to reflect on and one small habit you can start practicing. If you like building your confidence in a practical, everyday way, you can download my free 30-day confidence challenge. It's designed to help you build simple micro habits each day so your confidence grows steadily over time. You'll find the link in the show notes. Make sure you're following this podcast so you don't miss the next episode, where we'll continue to explore what confident leadership really looks like. And if you're a fan of social media, you can find us on TikTok under decoding_confidence or Instagram decoding_confidence. Remember, confidence isn't something that you're born with. It's something you practice one day at a time. See you next time.